Hi. So we are now moving on to part 7, and this is where we now start the Blake Lively part of the deposition for Justin Baldoni. I did have to I was going to start this part yesterday because I think I only did a half-hour video for part 6 where I wrapped up the Stephanie Jones part, but we interrupted in the end because Jed Wallace filed a letter with the court. And I think if anyone's watched my video, we'll all agree that it was well worth, interrupting service for that. Okay, we go into day 2. So we've done 7 hours. Day 1, that was for Stephanie Jones. This is day 2, it's another 7 hours. And this is for Blake Lively. And she's actually watching over Zoom. You can see at the top here, Zoom appearances, Blake Lively. We've also got over Zoom Melissa Nathan. Laura Prather. I was like, oh, Laura Prather, that name's familiar. I've just remembered who she is because she was also on the day 1. She was observed in the day 1 deposition. She is Blake Lively's current attorney for the Texas docket. And obviously there is notice of an appeal now being filed by Jed Wallace on that docket. Laura Prather represents Blake Lively. However, she has also previously represented Jed Wallace in the Bam Margera lawsuit, which I talked about as I was kind of going through. I think where did I talk about that? It was in the part 4 episode, actually, and I put a link to my X-thread about breaking down the Bam Margera lawsuit that Jed Wallace was involved in. He was sued by Bam Margera. And I was sort of saying, because I think the theme was that he wasn't looking good in terms of how he has represented himself and, the things that he has kind of done. And Bam Margera was one of the situations where he did not look good at all. I strongly gave a caveat. That doesn't mean he's done anything wrong here. I'm yet to see evidence that he's actually done anything wrong here. So I'm going off that. I still very much support Jed Wallace. I do not like some of the stuff that's coming out about Jed Wallace and Melissa Nathan in particular. But that does not mean that they've done anything wrong towards Blake Lively. It certainly doesn't mean that they've done anything at Wayfarer's request. So, but yeah, so Laura Prather, she represented Jed Wallace in the lawsuit against Bam Margera. And then Blake Lively found this out, actually, and then hired her against Jed Wallace in this lawsuit. So it's kind of like a similar situation to, I guess, Brian Friedman, who represented Travis Flores against Justin Baldoni and now represents Justin Baldoni. Except, well, I guess no except, really. It is a similar situation. But yeah, so, again, to highlight the allegations that Travis Flores' widower is sort of making that, there's a conflict of interest. No, these things happen. These things happen. You can take on a client that you have gone up against. You previously, you can take on someone where you have represented their opponent in the past. And in particular, especially in Brian Friedman's situation, where his former client that he represented against Justin Baldoni is now deceased. So, yeah. Okay. So, Blake Lively, I'm hoping this is going to be more interesting. So also in the deposition room, Steve Sarrett, Jen Abel, and Jamie Heath. I am going to just quickly stop sharing. I just want to make sure I'm not exposing any addresses. Okay, I don't think I am, so I'm going to reshare that. I think they gave the address yesterday. And although it's technically, like a different part of the deposition, I don't think they're going to go through all that again. Okay. So they've gone through all the introductions and everything. This is Gottlieb now for Blake Lively. Again, Blake Lively is on Zoom watching all of this. Okay. So Gottlieb starts. Good morning, Mr. Baldoni. Good morning. Have you ever been sexually harassed? So he goes straight for the jugular. Justin, yes. When? That I've reported or just in my life? Let's start with ones you've talked about, times you've talked about. Harassed. I believe I spoke about a time when I was in the Burke Williams Spa in West Hollywood, and I was in the hot tub waiting for a massage, and I had my shorts on, my bathing suit shorts on, and there was a gentleman that was like multiple hot tubs, and he was in another hot tub, and I saw him look at me, which I was used to, looks and things, and then he joined me in my hot tub, and he started to share that he was a producer or manager, and then he tried to get me to take off my bathing suit because he said that all the other actors and celebrities go in the hot tub naked. I said I wasn't comfortable with that, so I jumped in another hot tub, and then he followed me into that hot tub, and he was nude. And I was sitting in the hot tub, and he walked right up to me, fully nude, and then he sat in the hot tub with me, and he continued to try to get me to take off my bathing suit, and I left. Gottlieb, and I think you told this story in an interview with Glamour magazine. Is that right? I don't know which magazine it was. I remember talking about it only once, and it was right after a speech that I gave. Okay. After that TED talk you gave? Yes, at TED Women. Do you recall being asked a question prompting that answer? Did you ever feel like you were harassed or victimized on set? I don't remember that. Okay, but as you sit here today, this is the first example that you brought up in response to my question of whether you've ever been sexually harassed. That's the first response. I think you asked me if I talked about it publicly. Okay, yeah. Why did you feel harassed by what this producer did? Well, he was asking me to get naked in the hot tub with him and standing very close to me with his naked genitals, like intentionally walking close to my face. It was just him and I in there. And he was using the idea that he's a successful manager to try to get me to do something I didn't want to do. And it was very sexual. It made you uncomfortable? You could say that, yeah. And you told him you didn't want him to do that? Yes. And then he did it again? Yes. And then you left? Yes. Why did you perceive this person to have power, or how did he seem powerful to you? He said that he was powerful. I don't think I felt that he was powerful necessarily, but he was claiming he knew all these A-list stars, and he would say things like Clooney is in here all the time without his shorts on, and referring to I don't know. I was maybe 25, and yeah, he was older, much older. My first thought already. I'm not quite. I mean, I get what Gottlieb's trying to do here, but he's trying to compare a naked man walking around with his genitals in your face, literally following you from hot tub to hot tub, and trying to persuade you to be completely nude, to what Blake Lively's big massive coat, like Justin Baldoni asking her to take that off because the room is hot. I find this ridiculous. They're not even comparable. All right, Gottlieb. Did he touch you? No. Did he threaten you? No. So he didn't assault you. I wouldn't call it assault. I don't believe I characterized it as assault. I didn't say you did, sir. Right, you're going to hear me moan and groan a lot if this is how this goes. Yeah. You are bigger and stronger than this guy, right? I would imagine I was. This wasn't someone the size of Dwayne Johnson or The Rock. They're the same people. Or something like that. It was not. So if it had come to it, you probably could have knocked this guy out. Oh my God. Shapiro objects, rightly so. Justin, I'm not much of a fighter. I would have left. You didn't work for the guy, right? No. So you had no employment relationship with him? No, I didn't. Okay. Do you know who he was? I think he told me his name, but did you try and find him after the incident to talk to him about it? No. Did you find him before you talked about this event in Glamour magazine? Shapiro objects. Justin, no. You didn't want to give him an opportunity to take accountability for his actions and make it right? I didn't name him. But you described him and described who he was friends with and the spa you were in. Shapiro objects. I don't know if I described who his friends were. Do you know his name as you sit here today? No. I think you've already talked about your experience with your college girlfriend, is that right? Yes. Do you believe that your college girlfriend sexually assaulted you? I do. Do you believe she raped you? I'm not sure if I believe she raped me, no. If I understand some of the talks you've given about this is something that you sort of remembered or confronted during therapy. Shapiro objects. Yes. How many years after this event or events occurred would you say you confronted it through therapy? Maybe starting about 10 years after? Okay, I'm not going to ask you about conversations you've had with your therapist or lawyers in this deposition, but apart from those conversations with your therapist, what did you do to try to piece back together what happened to you that 10 years prior? I mean, it was a lot of therapy, a lot of meditation, thinking about it, going back and forth. It wasn't just like one moment and then suddenly like, oh, that's what happened. It's a journey, and the memories, they shift and they come and go, and then you justify. But it was a lot of therapy, conversations with my wife. How long I think you've described this as a very bad relationship, is that fair? It was not a good relationship. The relationship with the college girlfriend? Yeah. How long did it last? I believe about a year and a half. Did you all have mutual friends? I believe at that point we just all had the same friends. You had a group of friends that in college, I'm sorry, what years of college was this for you? Freshman year going into sophomore year. Okay, so you had a group of friends that you all hung out with, and sorry, I need to back up. Where did you go to college? Cal State Long Beach. Okay, so freshman and sophomore at Cal State Long Beach. That's a big school, right? Yes. And you and your girlfriend had a relationship that lasted some amount of time. I imagine there are other people who knew you were dating. Shapiro objects. She didn't attend the school. She didn't go to college. Did your friends at college know who you were dating? Yeah, a few of them did. Okay, before you talked about what happened to you in public, did you go back to talk to your college girlfriend? No. Did you try to find her? No. Did you ever attempt to communicate to let her know that you were going to be accusing her of sexual abuse in public? Shapiro objects. Justin, no. Did you ever go back to talk to any of your college friends or people that you might have hung out with mutually to tell them what you were going to do? I don't know anybody from back then. Do you have any idea whether or not your college girlfriend would agree with the way you have remembered the events relating to the losing of your virginity? Shapiro objects. I don't know what she would think. I don't know who she is anymore. But you thought it was okay to go on TV and tell the world that your college girlfriend had sexually abused you without ever talking to her about it? Shapiro objects. I wasn't aware I needed to ask her permission to share my story. Am I right that one of the things that was most traumatic about this to you is that you were saving yourself for marriage? That was part of it. I also just wasn't ready. And so you were a virgin at age 18 when you met her in college? Yes. And I believe your description of what happened is that you woke up in the middle of the night and she was taking it from you. Is that an accurate description of your words? No. Shapiro objects. Okay, how would you describe it? Oh my God, I really don't get this line of questioning. How would you describe it? I think you're confusing two different stories. Okay. You say you're wrong, but that wasn't the story that I shared in my book. Okay, you've never described the incident when you lost your virginity as waking up and discovering your college girlfriend was taking it from you without consent? No, that wasn't the story of how I lost my virginity. Okay, I'm mistaken then. Yeah, there was a moment in the relationship where I was woken up by her on top of me having sex with me. But that was after I had already lost my virginity. What is her name? Shapiro, objection. I'm going to instruct you not to answer that. On what basis? It's irrelevant and not calculated to lead to discoverable evidence. This is not a proper basis to instruct a witness not to answer a question. I'm instructing him not to answer. So this is Gottlieb and Shapiro going back and forth. Gottlieb, are you going to follow your counsel's instruction? I am. Would you be capable of telling me her name but for your counsel's instruction? I would. Okay, are there any other incidents relating to sexual harassment or abuse that you have suffered that you have talked about publicly? I don't believe so. Did these experiences inform why you wanted to make It Ends With Us into a movie? Not. I don't know if it was a conscious thing. Once I had read it, once I was making it, it informed how I wanted to make the movie, but it wasn't like the reason for making the movie. Okay, I think I understand you. It wasn't the originating seed. No. But it did inform how you approached the making of the movie, your personal experiences. It 100% informed the narrative arc of the film. And yeah, I would say the adaptation from the book to the script. And also how I was able to connect with it. And it obviously has informed your podcast, correct? By it, I mean your experiences we've just discussed. My sexual trauma, yes, has informed my podcast. It's not the reason I did my podcast, but there was absolutely moments where we discussed sexual trauma, and yeah, it's one of the many things we discuss. Okay, and I will stick with your framing, which I like, which is not the thing that caused it originally, but informed in some ways. So it's the same with respect to this question. Did your experiences inform what you wanted out of Wayfarer Studios? Shapiro objects. Did my experiences with the sexual trauma inform in any way what I wanted out of Wayfarer Studios? Not consciously. Perhaps subconsciously? Objection. I'm not an expert on the subconscious, but I imagine the subconscious exists in all of us. Do you believe that work is service? But you do believe that work is service, right? Shapiro objects. I believe that work should be and can be a form of service, correct? And you believe in the tenets of the Baha'i faith? Is that a question? Yeah. Do I believe? Yes, absolutely. And Wayfarer is a Baha'i-inspired organization, is it not? Wayfarer Studios? I think we were very mindful, actually, to not make it a Baha'i-inspired organization, but it was inspired by the principles of the Baha'i faith. I don't believe it's officially labeled a Baha'i-inspired organization, and there are reasons behind that. Sure. It's not a Baha'i-only studio, right? Absolutely not. But it is nonetheless inspired by many of the principles or tenets of the Baha'i faith. Is that fair? By the belief system of the people who started it, inspired by it? Yeah. And that would be, at least in its current form, you and Mr. Sauerwitz? Correct. And you both share the Baha'i faith? Shapiro objects, we both share that we are both Baha'is, yes. And you both have talked about publicly many times some of what you consider to be the important tenets of the Baha'i faith? Objection. I think that's accurate, yeah. Okay, did you ever tell anyone you ran a Baha'i set? Baha'i set? I have no idea. I don't know what a Baha'i set would be. If I did, you're welcome to show me. Did you ever hear Mr. Sarowitz refer to your sets as any of your sets as Baha'i set? I have not. Would you even know how to describe what a Baha'i set is? A set with all Baha'is? I don't know. Well, you're the director and you're the co-founder of the studio, and I'm here and I'm asking you, okay? Yeah, but he just said he doesn't know what that is. You're suggesting that it's a Baha'i set and then saying to him, well, you should know what it is. I don't know. What an idiot. Yeah. Okay. Someone has told me that your set is a Baha'i set. Okay? Are you giving me a Shapiro objection? Just let me finish my question. Okay, so let's establish some principles. You're the co-founder of Wayfarer Studios, correct? Correct. You were the director of It Ends With Us, correct? Correct. Producer? No. Lead actor? Second lead actor. Second lead actor. And I come to you now and I say, Mr. Baldoni, you're the director of this film, you're the co-founder of the studio. Someone has told me this is the set of It Ends With Us is a Baha'i set. What does that mean? Shapiro objects. Justin, I have no idea. Okay, I want you to read something Mr. Sarowitz says, and you watched some of his depositions, so you may have been in for talking about some of this. I just want to know if you agree, disagree, or is this from his deposition or something else? It's not. It's something else he said elsewhere, so I'm going to read it to you. And I'm going to ask you your thoughts on it. Okay. This is from a talk that he gave in 2020. He said, art reflects society and society reflects art, and we want to make art that raises spirits. That's the number one thing. If you really want to say what Justin and I are doing together, what he does so well, and I support him in doing, is he makes movies that uplift our spirits. And I'm so happy to be his partner in doing that. So it's really just another practical application of faith. Do you agree with what Mr. Sarowitz said there? I agree that those are his feelings and that it's really nice, yeah. Do you share his feelings with respect to what I just read to you? Can you read it one more time? Art reflects society and society reflects art, and we want to make art that raises spirits. That's the number one thing. If you really want to say what Justin and I are doing together, what he does so well, and I support him in doing, is he makes movies that uplift our spirits. And I will stop right there because the rest of it is surplusage. Shapiro, are you going to pose this question? He asked me to repeat what I read so he can decide if he agrees with it or not, and I've just done that. Yeah, I think that I would agree with that's our intention, 100%. Now let me read to you what he said 2 sentences before. He said, so I look at Hollywood right now, TV and movies, is a lot of what it is gratuitous sex, gratuitous violence. It's things that lower the soul. Do you agree with Mr. Sarowitz that in Hollywood, gratuitous sex and gratuitous violence lower the soul? Shapiro objects. Me and Steve have many conversations where we tend to disagree on things that lower the soul, so I think that we are in agreement most of the time, and also I think that a blanket statement like that would be hard to agree with. Do you agree with him on the proposition that gratuitous sex in Hollywood films is a bad thing? I think where Steve and I would have conversations is what is gratuitous and what is not. As Steve is somebody who wouldn't even want there to be a cigarette or marijuana in a film, even if it had to do with the storyline. And any sex at all, at times, Steve has felt was gratuitous. So we've had different conversations about that. Okay. So we have to define gratuitous before I can agree with his statement. Okay. All right. Let's start from the premise of, do you think gratuitous sex, however you define it, not how Mr. Sarowitz defines it, yeah, do you think that is a problem in Hollywood films. Shapiro objects. There's a lot of films that are made in Hollywood, and I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I just want to be mindful of the generalizing. I think that I believe we put so much sex and sexualize so many things that we've become numb to it. And over time, since we've become numb to it, and I'm speaking generally as a we, collective we, in order to have more of a shock effect, then I think that's where Hollywood has gone and made like sex has just become something that you expect to see oftentimes that doesn't actually have to do with the storyline, or I don't know if it necessarily moves the plot forward. So in that sense, I guess I would agree. And I think that in general, Hollywood doesn't make movies for the soul much anymore. It does. I mean, there are certain people that do, but I'm just saying it's definitely become much more about attention and money and just competing with other places for people's attention in whatever can shock them the most is what wins. And you founded Wayfarer to be different from what you just described, is that right? Objection. I did. You founded Wayfarer to be lights in the darkness, is that correct? That was part of the mission. You, in founding Wayfarer, said that in Steve Sarowitz you had resources and a partner who shared values and beliefs. Is that fair? Yeah. Do you recall saying about Wayfarer Studios that you and Mr. Heath were making a concerted effort to build a spiritual enterprise in every sense of the word, where everybody is free to have their own beliefs and express opinions that may be different from the executives or the shareholders, where there is true unity and equality across the board, and where we're mindful of the positions of power and how those power dynamics work? What's the question? Do I remember saying that? Do you remember saying that? It sounds more like something I've written. I'm not sure. Does it sound like something you would write or say? I don't know if I'm that eloquent when I speak, but it sounds like it's definitely in line with something that I believe or aspire to. If I told you that quote appeared out of publication on BahaiTeachings.org entitled Wayfarer Studios aims to be a light in the darkness, would that refresh your recollection at all? Objection. That would confirm it was probably something that I wrote versus I said. Okay. And do you believe that you have created a spiritual enterprise where everyone is free to have their own beliefs and express their own opinions that may be different from the executives or the shareholders? Objection. Do I believe I've created it? Along with others, do you believe in Wayfarer Studios you've achieved that objective? To be very frank, I don't know that is something that I could ever be fully 100% achieved. I know we strive for it, but I wouldn't be comfortable saying we've achieved it. Okay, you strived for it. Strived, yeah. And in creating the culture at Wayfarer Studios, do you believe that you have tried to be mindful of the positions of power and how those power dynamics work? Objection. Again, it's something that we strive for, not perfect at, but strived. As the director of It Ends With Us, do you believe you had more power than members of the cast or crew that were not directors? Shapiro objects. In thinking about power dynamics, yes. And you supervised essentially everyone who was on set, directly or indirectly, is that right? Objection. I'm not sure if I would consider that my role as director. Were you ultimately responsible for what happened on the set of It Ends With Us? Objection. I wouldn't put that solely on the director, no. But I didn't ask if you were responsible. I didn't ask if you were the only person. Can you not interrupt his answer, says Shapiro. You're right. Finish your answer. I apologize. Oh, I just said I wasn't. I don't think I was the only person responsible, but I was part of that responsibility, of course. Okay, so I'm not asking if you were the only person who was responsible. But as a director, are you ultimately responsible for what occurs on the set of your movies? Objection. I'm not sure that I would completely agree with that, the way that question is framed. Okay. What is it about the question that you disagree with? The framing of the question? I just think the premise is off. What piece of the premise is off? One of the director's jobs is to bring on a great team, and each of those team members have responsibilities. I think it would be impossible for a director to manage everybody. So there are department heads and producers and executive producers and all kinds of various jobs that each have people reporting under them, and that each have their own responsibility. So like, if, something happened to an extra, I don't know if that's ultimately the director's responsibility. If the catering was cold that day, I don't know if that's the director's responsibility. If a stunt person was killed, I feel like that might be a bit of a jab at Deadpool 2. Just saying. If a stunt person was killed, I don't know if that's the director's responsibility. There is a stunt department. So that's what I mean by the premise, at least my understanding of what you were asking. What about what the director does? Objection. Who is responsible for that? Could you be more specific? Well, the director is not responsible for the caterers or the stunt doubles, but what about the director? Is the director responsible for what the director does? Yes, of course. I was just answering your question to the best that I could. Okay. So we can at least agree that as director of It Ends With Us, you were responsible for what you did on the set. I was responsible for a lot, yeah. What you did, what some other people did. That we'll have to define as we go through the day, but not everything. Is that fair? Objection. Not solely responsible for everything, but responsible, of course. I'm the director. Okay. Did Wayfarer Studios have policies and procedures that were in place during the filming of It Ends With Us? Objection. Policies and procedures? Any policies and procedures that were in place? I believe so. And were those policies and procedures applicable to you as the director of the film, to the best of your knowledge? Objection. You have to be more specific on what policies and procedures that you mean. Okay. The stenographer says Exhibit 20 for the record. Mr. Baldoni, you've been handed a document marked as Exhibit 20. Can you take a look? It's a lengthy document. Am I on this document? Take a look through the first few pages, and the first thing I'm going to ask you is if you recognize it, and I will ask you some more questions. Mr. Baldoni, I think you've now had a chance to look at the cover letter. Yes. And the table of contents. I haven't looked at all the table of contents of it. You flip through it. Would you like me to look at them? There's not going to be a quiz on it, I promise. Sure. The main thing, the first thing I want to ask. Have you ever seen this? Not the text chain that's on the front, but the employee handbook that begins on the page with the base number 139049 on it. I believe years ago, yes. Okay, and you and Mr. Sauer sign off on the introductory letter to this handbook, is that correct? Our names are on there, so yes, we do. You are the co-chairman of the studio, is that correct? That is correct. There is no other chairman of the studio you are aware of? Objection. Just Steve Saueritz and myself. What are the responsibilities that go along with being, to the best of your understanding, the co-chairman of Wayfarer Studios? My responsibilities? Any responsibilities that you believe apply to you? My responsibilities are to help select and pick who I believe, along with my co-chairman, to be the best managers for the company. To help the company in its creative direction. More bird's eye view of ideally, hopefully where we're going. And then to consult with the CEO and president and upper management. And my creative responsibilities are also to help with creative for the various projects that we have. Okay. Based on my time. You see in the cover letter that you and Mr. Saueritz have written for this handbook a reference to Wayfarer Studios being a Baha'i-inspired organization. I see that, yes. We were talking a little bit about that before. It's not a, yes, this is consistent with what you previously testified to. Objection. Yeah, I did not remember. We had many conversations about actually not calling it a Baha'i-inspired organisation. So I think legally we did not. And that was mostly because we didn't ever want to make anybody feel like they were working at a religious company. So I believe an early version of this did not have it on there, which is where my memory was coming from, but I do see it here and I don't deny that. Okay, are you aware of a later version of this handbook in which that was removed? I'm not aware of a later version. I imagine this is the most recent version. I believe there have been different versions of this various letter over the years. And when you say legally you were not a Baha'i-inspired organisation, I'm not going to be asking you for your legal opinions during this deposition. No. What are you saying? It was just in the starting of an organisation as it relates to the Baha'i faith. We did not want our company to in any way be part of the Baha'i faith as an organisation. I see. So that's essentially what I mean, is that because the Baha'i faith's internal government, if you will, is different than maybe like the Catholic Church or other Christian organisations, there is a Baha'i organisation that actually is a government in the Baha'i faith. And we did not want a company to legally be tied or associated with an official Baha'i organisation. I understand. So that was the debate and the conversation around like the Baha'i-inspired organisation and what that actually means. Okay. Do you see where you've written with Mr. Saras? This handbook has been written to serve as a guide for our relationship and the various work rules. Yes. And then do you see, if you flip a page over in the table of contents, there is a series of categories? I'm looking, sir, at page 139050. There is a list of categories of different types of rules that apply to employees of the company. Are you looking at employment underneath employment? I'm just asking you if you see in the table of contents a bunch of different categories of policies, procedures, and rules. Yes, I do. That apply to the company? I do see that. Okay, if you flip ahead to page 5 of this document, do you see at the top of that page equal employment opportunities, anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy at the top? Yes, I do. And have you ever read this policy? I don't know if I've ever read this one, no. You don't know, or you think you haven't? The policy that is directly in front of me, I don't know if I have read this policy. Okay, so do you know if you've ever had any kind of training on this policy, this anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy? Yes, I believe I have. When was that? I think every couple of years. When was the last time you attended one? In person? At all, virtually or in person? Virtually, I completed mine last week. Okay, for this year. For the year 25? Yes. Prior to that, do you recall the last time you had training on this policy? I imagine it was 2 years before that. Do you recall there ever being a training on anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation during the production of It Ends With Us? Yes. Did you attend that training? I did. Did you attend that training in person? Yes. Where was it? In our production offices. On the set of New Jersey? Not a set, but the production offices in New Jersey. Okay, the production offices in New Jersey, near where the... Strike that. Yeah, strike that. All right. It's a bad question. Okay, we'll come back to that. During that training, do you remember going through examples or scenarios of types of conduct that would be a violation or a potential violation of this anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policy? I can't remember the specifics, but I do. That was the bulk of the harassment training. Was there a presentation? It was a man, yeah. We were in person, but the man was over Zoom. Okay. From my memory. Were there slides? I'm assuming there were, yes. Okay, so if I showed you some slides, you might be able to tell me if they were the ones you saw. To be very honest, if you showed me slides, I would not know if they were the exact ones I saw. It was years ago. I think I said might be able to tell me, but okay, fair enough. Do you see at the top of page 5, in the second paragraph, second sentence, the sentence, and he reads, Wayfarer Studios strictly prohibits discrimination, harassment, or retaliation against employees, applicants, or any other covered person. I see that. And that's the Wayfarer Studios policy, right? Yes. Do you agree with it? Yes. You've done your best to follow it? I have done my best to follow it, yes. Do you see the long list of characteristics that under Wayfarer Studios policy are protected? Objection. May I read it? Sure thing. I've read this paragraph. Okay. You've read the paragraph that lists out protected characteristics, correct? Yes. So you see that gender is protected? I do. You see that sex is protected? Yes. And you see that further includes pregnancy, breastfeeding, childbirth? I do. Do you see that height and weight are also protected characteristics? Height and weight, and yes. And do you see the next line down that says, after that paragraph, the sentence says, all Wayfarer Studios employees, officers, principals, agents, workers, and representatives are prohibited from engaging in unlawful discrimination, harassment, and/or retaliation? Yes. And you were an officer of Wayfarer Studios, is that correct? As co-chairman, I believe I am. And you were also an agent or an employee because you were hired to be the director of It Ends With Us? Objection. Yes. And you certainly represented Wayfarer Studios in your role as co-chairman, right? I believe I am. And in fact, you and Mr. Saritz are the highest people in the hierarchy of Wayfarer, is that right? Objection. Yeah. Ultimately, the CEO and upper management answer to you, Mr. Saritz, is that right? Ultimately, yes. In other words, if you and Mr. Saritz decide, you had it with Mr. Heath, it's your decision whether to get rid of him, right? Yes. Do you want to tell him or should I? I think you should. It would go over smoother. So do you see that one paragraph down from the sentence I just read, the anti-harassment policy? I see that. And do you see where it says, I have not read this, so, okay, can I read it? Why don't you read that? I'm going to ask you questions about the next 3 paragraphs. So if you want to read the next 3 paragraphs, then I will ask you questions about them. I think I've gotten through them now. Okay, so back on the previous page, page 5 of this document, and in the start of the anti-harassment policy, do you see the sentence that reads, Wayfarer Studios prohibits harassment, disrespectful or unprofessional conduct by any employee of the company, including supervisors, managers, and co-workers. Do you see that? I do. Do you understand what that means? That we prohibit harassment by anybody at the company? Okay. Do you see then the sentence that starts with harassment may be verbal, written, or physical conduct? I do. Okay, so if you carry that sentence over to the next page, harassment may be verbal, written, or physical conduct, go to in front of the A, B, and C. That A has the purpose or effect of creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment, or B has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance, or C, otherwise adversely affects an individual's employment opportunities. Do you see that sentence? I do. Do you recall ever receiving training with respect to any of those concepts in the sentence I just read to you? I believe I do. Do you recall receiving training that discussed that harassment can be conduct that has either the purpose or the effect of creating a hostile or offensive work environment? I do. Okay. And do you see in the next paragraph, the sentence that reads, sexual harassment includes harassment that is not necessarily sexual in nature? What? Sexual harassment includes harassment that is not necessarily sexual in nature. Okay. That may be Wayfarer's policy, but that, from what I remember, is not the definition in law. It does actually have to be based on sex or sexual in nature. And law trumps a company's policy. I feel that their company policy, whilst very admirable aims and objectives, but it's incredibly broad. Okay. Do you see that? Yes. You've been trained on that concept? I believe I have. And you see further down there is another A, B, and C here, because of course we lawyers love to put A, B's, and C's into our documents. Do you see subsection C says, such conduct has the purpose or effect of substantially and unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance by creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. Do you see that? I do. Do you understand what that means? I believe I do. And you've been trained on that as well? I believe I have. Okay, do you see where it says sexual harassment may include a range of subtle and not so subtle behaviors? Yes. And it can include sexual jokes or innuendo, commentary about an individual's body, sexual prowess, or sexual deficiencies or touching. Shapiro objects. I know I left some words out. Yeah. But do you see the words that I read there? Yes. In this policy? Yes. And you've been trained on this as well? I believe I have. And because of that training, you understand that the policy prohibits behavior that has these effects on employees, regardless of whether those effects were intended. Is that right? And then Shapiro objects. Justin, I believe so, yes. Okay. If you look at then supervisor and manager responsibilities, do you see where it reads, if any supervisor or manager becomes aware of a violation of this policy, they are obligated to report the violation to Human Resource Management so Wayfarer Studios can investigate and, if appropriate, take corrective action. Yes. You understood that was your responsibility as a supervisor or manager? Objection. Yeah. And that was Mr. Heath's responsibility as a supervisor or manager? Yes. On the next page, do you see the section entitled Investigation? Yes. Do you see where it reads, any reported allegations of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation will be promptly and thoroughly investigated by qualified personnel in an impartial manner? Do you see that? I do. Do you see it says, Wayfarer Studios will ensure that these personnel will use the evidence to reach reasonable conclusions? Yes. And then one more sentence down after that. Wayfarer Studios will maintain appropriate documentation and tracking to ensure reasonable progress is made. Do you see that? And then there is a discussion of what happens at the close of an investigation. Do you see that? Yes. And do you see that depending on what's found in an investigation, Wayfarer Studios will consider appropriate options for remedial actions and resolution if misconduct is found? Sorry, voice is going already. Wayfarer Studios shall take prompt corrective action as appropriate. Do you see that? Yes. Was any investigation of the type described here in this paragraph conducted for the conduct that is at issue in this litigation? Shapiro objects. Not until this lawsuit was filed and we were made aware of the conduct. She never said anything about her problems. She complained about other things. So I think your testimony is, this lawsuit was filed. You were made aware of the conduct. We were made aware of allegations of misconduct. Okay, and then you launched an investigation? Shapiro objects. Justin, correct. And that is because I'm understanding you correctly to say you were made aware of allegations in the filing of this lawsuit that you were unaware of previously. Correct. What are the allegations as you sit here today that you understand were made in the lawsuit that you were not aware of previously? Objection. Sexual harassment, retaliation. I mean, there is a very long list that I'm sure you have that you can present me, and I can tell you what I was aware of or what I wasn't. Gottlieb. So I will do this to try to be clear and that we understand each other. I understand sexual harassment and retaliation to be legal labels that can include different incidents that might occur that inform those legal labels. Is that how you understand them? Shapiro objects, and I am going to do one more page, I think. Okay, yeah. Justin, can you say that one more time? Let me try it a different way, because that's going to take us down a lengthy rabbit hole that you won't like and your lawyers won't like and I will regret. You said that you had not been aware of allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation until the filing of the lawsuit. Yes. Okay. Do you understand that there were factual allegations that informed Ms. Lively's complaint asserting sexual harassment and retaliation? Can you break down what you mean by that? Do you understand that Ms. Lively's complaint or this lawsuit that you have said led to the launching of an investigation? That lawsuit included allegations of events that took place on specific dates and times that Ms. Lively asserted constituted sexual harassment and retaliation. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand that. Okay. Is it your testimony that you were unaware of the incidents that were described in the complaint, or is your testimony that you were unaware that Ms. Lively thought that those incidents constituted sexual harassment and retaliation? Shapiro objects. My testimony is that this lawsuit and the New York Times article and the CRD complaint was the first that I had heard of many of those allegations that evidently I was at or a part of, which I completely disagree with whether or not they happened. That said, the reason we launched an investigation was because this was the first official complaint lawsuit against us. So that investigation happened because it was the past HR complaint, because it was past the HR complaint situation. It was now an official, very public situation. Is it your understanding of the Wayfarer policy that in order to investigate allegations of sexual harassment and retaliation, that an official HR complaint needs to be filed by the complainant? I'm not sure. In fact, didn't we just look at, on page 6 of the policy in the section entitled Supervisor and Manager Responsibilities, there's a line that says, if any supervisor or manager becomes aware of a violation of this policy, they are obligated to report the violation to Human Resources Management, so Wayfarer Studios can investigate and, if appropriate, take corrective action. Shapiro objects. I see that, yes. So it's actually under your Wayfarer Studios policy, is it not incumbent upon the person who feels that they have been harassed to come forward with a HR complaint? So, no, sorry, let me read that again. So it is actually under your Wayfarer Studios policy, it's not incumbent upon the person who feels that they have been harassed to come forward with a formal HR complaint. Is that right? Shapiro objects. I don't know if there's another part of this that says there needs to be a formal HR complaint or not, so I don't know. Okay, you don't see one as you're sitting here looking at this page, do you? Under the box that says Supervisor and Manager Responsibilities. Shapiro objects. No, I don't see one. Okay. You testified yesterday, I believe, that you've never read the New York Times article. Is that correct? Never personally read it, no. You never sat down to read the article published by the New York Times written by Megan Twohey about the incidents in this case. I did not personally sit down to read it. So, as you sit here today, you do not know personally anything that article says. Shapiro objects. No, I would not say that's true. You have no personal knowledge from your own experience of what that article says, is that right? I have personal first-hand knowledge from what my attorney's given me point by point, all that was in the article. Okay, let me just see. Yeah, I'll go one more page actually. Okay, so this is Gottlieb. Okay, so let me try it this way because I don't want to ask you questions about your conversations with your lawyers. Other than what other people have told you, whether attorneys or anybody else, other than what other people have told you about what is in the Megan Twohey article, do you have any knowledge of what is in it? I do. And what is that based on? It's based on reading parts of it. What parts of it do you recall reading? I remember reading the beginning, then feeling sick. I remember reading some of the details around what I was being accused of. I remember just seeing my private text messages on there and being very confused. I remember reading that they had launched an investigation, or that they had done she had done this investigation and gone through thousands of documents but never spoken to me or anyone from our company. Was that troubling to you? That an investigative journalist did a New York Times article and put my picture and my face on the cover and didn't ask me any questions about it? I found that troubling. It's important in understanding an event that has happened in talking to the eyewitness, right? Superior objects. I can see where he's going with it. But it was all right for you, though, to talk about your ex-girlfriend and that bloke in the hot tubs, yeah? And there's a stark difference because he never mentioned names or put pictures of them up. It's very different. Superior objects. Are you meaning when you're an investigative journalist and you're writing for the New York Times? As a human being searching for the truth? Superior objects. If the writer wasn't there, I would assume so. One of the reasons, and that's another good distinction as well, Megan Twohey was not there for any of this, whereas when Justin is talking about his personal experiences, they are personal experiences. If Blake Lively had authored the New York Times article herself, then there may be a different optic we're coming at from this. But, still. Gottlieb, okay. One of the reasons you're upset is that you felt like there were incidents that were described that left out your perspective. Is that right? There were many reasons that I was upset. My question was, one of the reasons you were upset is because there are incidents that were described that left out your perspective on what happened. Is that right? Superior objects. Justin, yes. Okay, when Ms. Lively sent her California Civil Rights Department complaint to you via attorneys, and then Justin, via you, did you read it? No, not that version of it, no. Did you ever read it? Not the initial one that was sent. I think you said yesterday you didn't read Stephanie Jones's lawsuit. Is that correct? No. Did you read Miss Lively's amended complaint in this case? I did. When did you read that? I think shortly after it was filed. I don't know the month. Okay, back on the policy. And then I read the previous version, not that you asked me. The original complaint. I think there was a complaint and an amended complaint. Okay. Did you read the complaint that you filed in federal court before it was filed? I did. Did you read the complaint that you filed against the New York Times before it was filed? I did. Everything all the way through? To the best of my reading ability? Did you believe that everything in the New York Times was truthful and accurate? I believed it to be. Did you believe that everything in the complaint, an amended complaint that you filed in federal court in the Southern District of New York, everything in it and the attachment to be truthful and accurate? Superior objects to form. I believed it was. I'm going to stop there because I'm going into a long question, so I don't want to cut that off. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to go into part, I want to say, yeah, we're in part 8. I'm losing track of this. Yeah, so I'm going to continue in part 8.